Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You're watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and my guest is no stranger to Conversations with Jennylyn. I love her so much, and so many of you have written to me about how much you love her energy that I'm going to bring her back as often as I can get her to share her warmth, her enthusiasm, and her love with us. Sacha Kuluri, thank you for taking time from down under for us today again.
So thank you so much for having me back again. I'm loving hanging out with you, loving it. I just feel like we're so connected, so far away, but so connected in so many levels. Like we just share the same opinions and the same values of so many issues, and I love that.
Thank you. And I agree with you. And you know, the great thing is last week I did a series of interviews and I was not feeling well. I knew I didn't have COVID, but I thought if I had to do it in a room with someone, I would have to cancel because I can't put someone at risk in case I have the flu. But the beautiful thing about this is it doesn't matter where you are. There is a screen separating us. So even if I have the flu, I cannot contaminate anyone because I'm so far away. But this week, I'm much better, and I'm looking forward to an exciting show with you today, especially because we're discussing a topic that means a lot to a lot of people, self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
Let you take the ball and roll with it.
Well, firstly, we have to notice I'm dressed up like I'm in the snow and you're in heat because I'm in Australia and it's winter down here and it's freezing cold and you're really hot over there.
And it's so hot here that if I could, I wouldn't be wearing anything.
Well, I would be wearing my pajamas and much more if I could be. It's so cold. I've got the fireplace going. Look, I have always been really passionate about self-esteem, self-awareness, and resilience. Like they're just the key things that I have always been aware of. I remember I really have to say thank you so much to my mum for that because my mum was somebody who came into, my mum came into listening and learning about self-esteem when a very early age when I was really young. And so it was such a big deal in our house talking about it. We were constantly saying things all the time about, how do you feel about this? How's your mental health around that? How are you personally feeling about different topics? What's your confidence level when you're going out there and talking to people? It was always being brought back to how are you feeling about this and how can you best make sure that you overcome everything. I was always taught from a young age, there is nothing that you can't overcome. No matter what life hands you, you will be able to overcome anything. And let me tell you, Jennylyn, I have had so much stuff happen in my life. Like, which story do you want to hear of, trauma, tragedy, blah, 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 all of these things. And I feel really blessed and really resilient to be able to say that I confidently, with an edge of a little bit fear, because you just never know what the world and what the universe is going to send you. But I'm strong enough to be able to handle whatever it is. And I have not got to this place in my life without making sure that I back myself first, to be able to know you can actually deal with this. That's my greatest thing. I back myself first.
Do you think that a lot of people with severe self-esteem issues, do you think it goes back to parenting and the messaging or the lack of support as the person was maturing? Because I feel that self-esteem, a lot of times, if you don't do the work on it, and if you weren't raised where you got any type of positive affirmations from the people that were raising you, oftentimes that person is lacking, and it doesn't matter what you say to them, it's very difficult to undo whatever wiring happened in the very delicate stages in the early days of their lives. How do you feel about that?
It's kind of like the nature versus nurture theory. I completely believe that parenting plays a huge thing. It's a radical thing. It's very important to be able to say that parenting plays a massive role in that. But then I also understand that as human beings, we have the ability to be able to then make our own decisions, even as a very, very young age. And you get to see that when parenting. I give my kids as much self-esteem as possible all the time. I'm boosting up their self-esteem. But then there is a thing where you think, I've done all of this work, and then I send you out in the world, and then you made that decision. Like, what? What? So there is that time where we also need to take responsibility. And when I say take responsibility as a human being, it's almost the minute you can start to have some sort of reasoning in your life at whatever age, there is always responsibility and consequences in your life. So no matter what what is being fed into your mind, it's up to you to choose what you do with it. I'm always teaching my kids self-esteem, and then the other day my son comes home and says, "Oh, I'm scared of this and I'm scared of that," and I'm like, "I have never taught you fear in your entire life. Where did you get this from?" Because he is a human being and has made it up himself. He's got other influences and factors that have come into his life other than just me, even though I'm the primary person that he would see and get his other information from. He watches TV, he watches YouTube, he gets, information from various sources. So, at the end of the day, I'm huge on taking responsibility. As much we can't just sit here and constantly blame our parents for every bad thing that's ever happened to us. And I'm not saying, I say that my mum gave me lots of self-esteem, but my mum made lots of mistakes. I didn't have, my mum has done some huge things, but that you only do what you know. You only do what you know. I mean, nobody goes out there to set themselves up to. My parents gave me what their parents gave them. You've got to know your history. It's imperative to know where you came from, what their stories were. Why did they make the decisions of who they were as a parent, or as when they were growing up, from their own parenting or their own grandparents, that has come back down to you? And then you get to positively make the choice to say, am I going to continue that, or am I going to break the cycle? My dad was an awful father. He was an awful, awful father. Just could, he was in every way, shape of forming, when you kind of go, whether it's abuse, whether it's mental abuse, physical, neglect, all of those things. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I learned what his childhood was like. And once I got to learn what his childhood was like, I realised how much of a change he had made from his childhood to mine. And I even thought that what his change was crap. Like, he didn't do very well at all. But he actually thought like he'd eliminated lots of things from his childhood. So it's now, I know better now. So now what am I going to do to my next children? And it's not just to my next children. I kind of see it as a mankind thing, it's humankind, because what can I do for your children? How can I help you to better yourself in your life so that you'll be a better mum? Or if I come across your kids, and I don't care if they're 40 or 50 or 10, how can I then feed them that information? It takes a village to raise a child. And at the end of the day, we're all children still. I'm somebody's daughter. I was somebody's little girl. I'm still that. I've still got that precious little girl inside of me that doesn't want to be hurt. Don't hurt me. This is the vulnerable side of me. So I'm a 45-year-old grown woman, adult, that has a very live little girl inside of her that says, don't hurt me. Just like everybody else. So so when I say it takes a village to raise a child, whether you're the same age as me, how can I help raise you by building your self-esteem and give you a piece of information that's going to change you, whether you're older or younger than me?
I agree with you, but I believe that as you mature, if you're someone who's raised with a lot of fear, or to think that there are things wrong with you, I know that growing up, my mother made a lot of comments about my legs and my neck, which is, I had a complex around those things. And as I grew older, those were the things that I got the most compliments on. And I thought the people paying those compliments were baddie, or they were just being kind. because the way my mother referred to them, it made me feel like something was severely wrong with them. So what I have found for me is the stuff that happened at where the foundation was being set and the early wiring. You grow up and you learn that those things are not true and you change them. But when you are ready to have a knee-jerk reaction, you default back to the former wiring. And I know this because I see it in myself. The things that I've grown up and changed because they weren't serving me to believe them. First of all, they weren't true. There was just someone very influential in my life. It was their opinion of me as a child then. And then I grew into the person that I am today, and I've done a lot of work on that person. And I know what is not true, and I know what is my truth and what may be someone else's truth. But in the heat of the moment, I go to the same knee-jerk reaction of buying into the formative messages. And I think this is what is happening with people in general. You know, we grow out of the things that we were told either by our parents. And unless you want to insulate your children and put them in a bubble, there's Halloween that's fear-based. The boogeyman's gonna get you. We live in a world that has so much fear in the messaging that
More than ever now with COVID, more than ever,
exactly,
out fear out of control.
exactly. So it doesn't matter how you try to make your children positive and you try to shield them from this fear-based messaging. It's part of the world, and it's such a big part of the world that you have to be careful that you're not making them, you want them to trust you. So you have to keep the dialogue open so that they can listen to you with both. Because it's one thing for us to tell our children there's nothing to fear. And then they watch television or they interact with other people their own age in school. And then they're like, my mom's lying to me. So it's a very fine line. What advice do you have for parents on how to handle that?
Well, I constantly, it's not one conversation, it's constant drip feeding of that information over and over and over and over again. And to know that you will make mistakes and you're doing the best that you possibly can under the pressure that you've got and the influences that you've got that you certainly would never have even predicted that you would even have. And whether it be outside influences, family, financial, relationship, all of these things come into practice when you're parenting. I think, I've written a parenting book, and my parenting book, yeah, I have written a parenting
What
book.
is it called? Tell us about it.
Two Worlds of Your Teenager. I have to send it to you. Hang on, I think I have a copy.
Yes. You're keeping all the good stuff secret. Not good.
Two Worlds of your Teenager. And so, it's interesting that you asked me about parenting, because I look at that and the first section of the book is that I come to you, the voice of this book comes to you with two voices. The first voice is me as a professional that's been working with young people for 25 years. But the second voice is that also of a parent, and that I can give you all these incredible strategies of what to do with your child and your young person. But do those strategies actually fit in and mold with your own lifestyle? So, for example, and I tell this story in my seminars all the time when I speak to parents. I'm always big on speaking to your kids, having that open relationship and constantly having, a space where they can come in and know that they have a safe space and talk to you at all times. And so I always talk about a story, and it's a very good friend of mine. And her son was, feeling like he wasn't good looking and he wasn't feeling attractive and no girls liked him, and, his self-esteem was falling apart and all of these things were going on in his life. Anyway, and then this one particular night, he goes off to a party, and he goes to this party, and when he goes to this party, he kisses he's like 16 or so or whatever, and he has his first kiss. And he comes home. Now, while he was at the party, the parents had been, this tension was building between these two parents for a really long time. And both of their kids are out of the house because they've both gone to see friends. And during the whole time that the kids are away, the parents have this huge argument, and the mum goes to bed crying, just puts her head in the back, and the dad goes to sleep in another room. And then the son comes home and from the party and wants to tell his mum about what's happened and the fact that he's kissed this girl. And he comes in and he thinks that she's asleep, but really she's under the covers because she's been crying and he doesn't want her to see. And he comes in and he goes, Mum, I want to tell you something. You know, something happened to me at this party or not. I kissed someone. Oh my God, I want to tell you all about it. And the mum says, I can't talk right now. I can't talk. You know, can we talk about this in the morning? And because she's in a vulnerable space, you know, she's to hell and back in that whole night, and he doesn't want her to see what's going on between her and her dad that night. And he says, oh, okay. And he puts his head between his legs and he kind of walks out the door. And blah, blah. The next morning she gets up, has a shower, cleans off her, you know, mascara down here and goes in and says, tell me about what happened. He says, I don't want to talk about it now, Mum. Right? And so...
Missed opportunity.
Do you see, right? So perfect parenting doesn't measure in that space, because what she was really trying to do was protect him from knowing what was really going on between her and his dad, and see how, and that would have upset him and all of that. She was protecting him in so much, but all he thinks is Mum doesn't listen because she's not there to listen to me to talk about that girl. So when I talk about parenting, we need to talk about parenting and look at it as a whole, because as a kid or as a young person, you don't see this other stuff. And you don't see the round circle of what's going on. So every strategy that's in this book on how to manage that situation is not going to work, because you're there in that space going, I need to protect my child against some really hard issues that are going on in my family. And the fact that, you know, my father, I'm about to separate from the husband and all of that, all of this stuff's going on. And yet he thinks I didn't listen to him because he didn't tell me about kissing a girl. So I think that when we look at parenting, we have to look at it as a whole and go, at times those strategies will work, and you will go into those moments where you will have those spaces that you can talk to your kids, and you need to stop and you need to do. And other times life has taken its toll and life gets the better of you, and you need to, you know, refocus on something else and then come back to it. And maybe at that point you need to come back to it and say, you know, and sometimes, Jennylyn, we don't learn this stuff until we're an adult, until you go, I've got to be in a relationship. I get to reflect back on Mum and Dad and what that was like and why
exactly.
Get to reflect back. And that's why it's a full circle. So you're the kid, and that's why you're always that little girl, because the one day when you become that adult and you figure out and you go, oh my God, I'm in this relationship that's just like that, and I'm in the stresses that my parents had, and I'm in this and it's different, and all of these different things, I can now reflect back on why they made the decisions that they made. And that's why it's important to know your history as well.
And I think that's why everyone says when your children grow up and they become parents, that's when a lot of the pieces that you can say it to them, but they don't get the concept until they've had the experience.
And it doesn't actually mean that you only get it once you become a parent. It's once all of a sudden, you know, the brain takes a long time to develop. Like, you know, we get called an adult when we're 18 or 21 or whatever it is, but a male's brain doesn't fully grow until it's like 27 or something. So how's it supposed to get? I mean, females' brains grow quicker, and I don't know the exact stats on that. But the thing is that we really do need to realise that you don't get the pieces of the puzzle, don't all, you know, amalgamate together until you start to get your own experiences. So even if you grow up and you don't have children, you still can then reflect back on, I've been in relationships, I get these different things. You only learn from those life experiences, or the fact that you're able to reflect. And that's what resilience and self-esteem and learning and reflecting and having empathy and seeing different things. I think that having empathy is so important, and being able to see, I don't like that person, I don't want to be that person, but what can they actually teach me? Some of my greatest lessons have been from having people in my life that I don't like and I don't want to be like. You know, I don't want to be like you. So when I see myself acting like that, snap it out. You know,
Yes.
I had people in my life that were drama queens. It was always a drama. And I remember being a young person, drama, until finally I looked back and went, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. So get it out. Every time I see myself acting like that, I have to tell myself, stop. I don't want to be that drama person.
I agree with you, and I'm the same way. As soon as I find someone is too much drama, it's not a judgment, but it's not a place that resonates. It's not someone who I feel like, oh, this is fun hanging out with this person. I just have as little interaction with them as possible, and I only interact if I have to. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to grow, and as you grow, you will see some people fit. They can continue on your growth cycle with you. And there are people that, if you pull them along, they're going to stagnate you. And so you have to do what you have to do as you develop to become your better self. I wanted to ask you, do you feel that especially young women who are raised in homes with dysfunctional relationships between the parents, that they have a tendency to pick men who treat them the way they saw their mom being treated if she wasn't treated appropriately? Do you think so? Do you from your experience, have you noticed that to be true?
Well, because it's almost so the brain works on a level where it understands its comfort zone. And wherever you are in your comfort zone is what it's experiencing. So if the brain is actually experiencing trauma on a regular basis, that almost becomes its comfort zone.
Yeah, normal.
So it becomes its norm. So when they go out into the world, you then start to look for that. And when you don't get it, so let's say you meet someone that isn't bringing in this same trauma, it's uncomfortable, you're not sure, and you can create that drama. I'm not saying this is 100% across the case with everybody, but it's certainly a pattern that I can see. All human beings, it's not even necessarily about males and females, it's about all human beings, because we recreate that in our lives. Men recreate that same experience as well. So I do definitely think that we need to change the structure of that comfort zone, because that comfort zone is where we go back to. And so if you've been raised in traumatic experiences where, you're seeing these kind of relationships, then you're able to you will then recreate that again. But again, I'm not here to blame parents. And I certainly am not, I'm doing my best in parenting myself. I'm not saying I'm, have the best marriage and the best household and the best thing. I'm doing my best with what I know, and my change and my history has been brought into this. My parents have been married. My mum was married 3 times, and my dad was married. Sorry, my mum was 3, and my dad was married 3 times. So just in my parents, I have 6 weddings, right? So that definitely does screw your mind up a little bit when it comes to marriage. So I came into my marriage going, I'm going to make this work at all costs, And sometimes I've had to reflect and go, at all costs? At all costs? Like, because I'm trying to break the cycle of where I'm coming from at all costs. But do you see? So you need to know my history to be able to say, well, why are you working so hard? Why are you giving it everything that you've got for such a long time? Why are you doing that? Because my history tells me I don't want to repeat what they've done. Will I make mistakes in this, Jennylyn? 100% I'll make mistakes, because maybe my kids would have said, Mum, what the hell are you doing? Or Dad, what are you doing? Whatever it might be. At all costs was a stupid thing. I don't know. And they'll reflect back when one day they wake up and they're 30 and 40 and they'll say, I don't want to do what my parents did. But I need you to understand my history and understand why I'm coming to the decisions that I am. Just like for everybody. We don't just pluck out a decision from here, Jennylyn. We come this decision from huge grinding of values and thought patterns, and whether they're right or whether they're wrong, to rub those out take a lot of work. And that's what, I mean, I'm big on therapy. I've been in therapy for years. Like I have no shame in saying I would not be the person that I am if I have not delved into my own personality, into my own psyche, into my own traumas, into my own depths of despair and things that have happened in my life, if I haven't been such an open book and been able to talk about them. So when you sit here and you think it's easy to talk about, it's not easy. It's taken me years to be able to do that. And so now I look at it and go, okay, right, I can survive. I've survived it, and I'm going to keep surviving, and I'll make more mistakes, and I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm trying my best to put my best foot forward so that I can then share what I've learned along the way to everybody else.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think there's any human on this planet who's got 100% self-esteem? I don't think so.
No,
I think
not
there
at all.
are people who are more in control of their behavior and their choices than others. But I think everyone has got some self-esteem challenges.
Of course they have. Of course they have. And,
Oh, there's one person, our president.
well, when I look at that, very interestingly enough, I look at high ego to me, in what I've realized, high ego reaches low self-esteem.
Right.
Okay? So if I'm constantly having to tell you how brilliant I am, it's almost like I'm needing to hear it so that I tell you.
Right. Exactly.
Do you know, Jennylyn, I've written a book. Do you know that I've done this? Do you know that I speak at these places? Do you know what I've done? Do you know that I've raised brilliant children? Do you know that I've done this? Do you know that I've done that? Hang on a second. Am I telling you or am I telling me?
And do I know you're the most beautiful woman in Australia?
Thank you. But do you know what I'm saying? If I'm constantly trying to, I've noticed this about myself, and it's really interesting. My friends, over the years, have seen me speak at different events or seen me, you know, in public life or whatever it might be, and then they say, I know when you're at your lowest in your self-esteem, because my friends are all, you know, we have these discussions, because you put on a resume talk. And I'm like, really? And it was really interesting when I said, she said, because I can tell that you're intimidated by that person, that you're raising your resume by telling them what you've done to make them think that you're smart enough without thinking.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that totally.
Sudden, I start then saying, well, I've done this. Do you know what I, you know, because I, you know, so I've noticed that when I do my resume talk, it's when I'm actually feeling at my lowest. So I try and cut that out because I don't need to sell myself. I don't want, because that makes me feel like I'm inadequate, that I need to put my resume forward to you in whatever it can be. I want to be able to share who I am, not put my resume so that you'll like me more. Like me for who I am, doesn't matter what my resume says I've done.
What do you think about people that put you in that position where you feel somehow that there's some vibe you get from them? Because I've experienced this where I've interacted with people and I get the distinct impression that they are judging me, that they are trying to make themselves superior. And in my youth, I did exactly what you just described. I put my resume self forward, like, oh, you think I'm stupid? You think I didn't do anything? You think, and then I start, you know, sharing all the things I've done. And then as I grew older, I caught myself, I'm like, why am I finding the need to come up to this person's expectations or describing myself or selling myself? The only time you should do that is if you're trying to convince someone to hire you for a job. But outside
that, there's almost a humble way of being able to do that, of dropping those rather than it be like a sales pitch.
Mm-hmm.
There's an art form to it. I definitely think that there's an art form to it. But I completely, do you know what I say to that? If you make me feel like I need to put my resume self forward, then you're not the right person for me.
No, but it may not even be in a relationship with a man. It could be a girlfriend.
It could be anything. And then you'll see that do you know what's really interesting? You and I, Jenny, have not actually revealed anything about each other in that sense.
No.
I don't know what you've done, how you've got your experience, what you've done.
Exactly.
To know that, because I know that right now you've got the experience to do this and we're feeling good about it. Does it matter what job and what degree you've got in order in would I like you even more and say, oh, well, do you know that she's got a degree in that? That's why she's good at it. I know what you're good at. I can see it. I can feel it.
See, the time is already up, but we're going to keep going. One of the things I want to say, I can't believe half an hour is gone. One of the things I was going to tell you is if you look at my shows that I've been doing, it's mixed. It's all types of people, all professions. I just interviewed a psychic medium last week. I'm going to interview her again. She's an international medium, and I believe that I value every person on the planet, whatever they're doing, whatever work they're doing, everyone, unless you are a dark person hurting people. Everything that we all do is bringing value to this planet and helping it to continue to provide for us and be a safe place for us to exist. And I don't judge anybody's choice of career. I feel that everybody's got their own gifts and their own talents, and I just love people. As long as you're a good person, I love you. I don't care what you do. I have time for you. And that is why I am so passionate about doing these interviews. People ask me, all you do is you sit and talk with people. What do you get from that? So much. So much I learn from every person that I interview.
Yeah. And do you know what? When people ask me just sit and talk to people, they're not getting it. And so that's you. I've learned that we don't need to share our stuff with that. There are certain people I don't share different things with about my life because you're not going to understand it. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that I don't care about you any less, or it's kind of like with your friends. You've got one friend that you talk all about work with, and then you've got one friend that you talk all about your relationships with, and you don't mix them up. You don't.
Exactly. And I think the fact that some people look down on maybe some of the people that I interview, like they're not important, why are you wasting your time interviewing them? I don't care. Everybody is important. And this is what I want to leave before we wrap up, and then I'll ask you what message you want to leave. My message to the world is, when I see someone who is not leaving the planet in an urn or a box, I will bow down to them and I will put them on a pedestal. But until such time, I have respect for everyone equally, unless I know you are a dark person who is doing dark things to hurt other people, because people do that, and I know. And that's my message. You're a good person. I don't care what job you do. I don't care who you are, what your philosophy is, what your ethnicity is. I love you and I have time for you. And that's my message.
I love that.
Yours.
My message would have to be that we have to come from love first. Like every decision that you always make, always come, what would love do? Now, sometimes we have to say, what would the love of self do? What would the love of my love for you do? What would my love for somebody else? Or what my love for the job that I'm doing or the organization that I work with? What would love do? And once we come from a space of love, a love and passion and inspiration and empathy and all of those entangled other emotions that come from love. Once we make that decisions on that, it's always got to be the right direction. Always.
Well, you have got great self-esteem, because it takes someone with self-esteem to make the statement that you just made. And I feel the same way. I just love people. I try to love everyone. It's difficult for me to love everyone because, like I said, once I find dark tendencies in you, it's difficult for me to love you because you're hurting other people.
You know what it is? I have, for the people that hurt other people, I have empathy because you must be hurting so much more inside.
That's it. That's key. I was going to say that. People who are hurting people are hurting themselves.
Absolutely.
But I don't know where they're hurting and I can't fix everyone. So I just, like you, my message is come from a place of love and compassion always. And protect yourself. And make sure that you have self-esteem. And if you're having trouble with it, please email Sacha.
You know, the other thing is we don't need to have people in our lives that hurt us. We don't need.
Exactly.
That's if I find that you're hurting me in your actions, in the way that you speak, it's okay for me to say I don't need you in my life and move away. Just because I have high self-esteem doesn't mean I need to have people in my life that destroy me. You know, I don't want anyone that's going to make my life more difficult and hurt me. So I don't, you know, and that's the beauty of being an adult, Jennylyn. You get to say, I don't want you in my life anymore.
Exactly. And I feel so much more empowered when I realize I don't need people in my life who are not adding value to it and who are trying to block me from doing what I was born to do. I just have to get rid of them. And it's not that people are disposable, but I think people come into our lives for seasons. Yes. And it's important that we recognize when their season is over and move on. And to have the self-esteem and the self-respect to recognize that and to move on.
And you know, with self-esteem also says that you don't know everything and that you will get it wrong. So I might get it right that I get this person's out of my life because of something, and then somebody else comes in again and totally destroys it all, and I made another mistake, and I'm okay because I'm a human being.
And that's how you learn. That's the whole purpose of it, is for us to learn. Before I go, tell us a little bit about your book and where can someone find it?
Oh, okay. So the 2 worlds of your teenager. Basically, what it's about is that myself and my business partner Sonia Karras, her expertise is all about drugs and alcohol and safe partying with young people. And so young people both come at the same time in their lives where they start to go out, push the barriers, start to drink alcohol, you know, experiment with drugs, go out, party, you know, nightclubs, all of that sort of stuff, at the exact same time where they start to think of their career, what subjects they'll pick at school, what career choices they'll have, universities, you know, job employments, different schoolings that they'll do. They both come at it at the same time. So as a parent, that's a really stressful time because at one point they're wanting to go out and then the next point they're asking you questions on their career paths. And so this is all around strategies around helping parents when those 2 worlds of your teenager match and meet up. How do you help them in that sense?
Great. And is it for sale on Amazon?
No, it's not. Well, you can get it on my website, which is sachakuluri.com.
And what is the cost of it?
I think it's $29. How bad is that? $27.99.
Okay.
I don't know how much it is. $27.99. Could be. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I am so grateful to you. I enjoy every single conversation I have with you, those that I do on my shows and those we do privately. You're a very inspiring person and you are the real deal. And it's difficult to meet someone the way we met and have developed the friendship we have. But I want you to know that you've added so much value to my life since you've come in. And that tells me you have great self-esteem, and thank you.
Likewise. And, you know, I'm just a normal person trying my best. And some days I get it right and some days I crash and burn, just like everybody else.
Join the club. So, Sacha, thank you so much. And thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. I try my best to share people with you that are making a difference. And my hope is these conversations are making your life better. And I thank you for watching my show, and I will see you next
Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.